A police canine stood at the edge of a frozen lake, howling like his life depended on it. His handler had never seen him act this way. Other officers tried to calm him, tried to pull him away, but the dog wouldn't budge. He just kept howling, staring at the ice, pawing at the frozen surface like he was trying to break through. What was beneath that ice wasn't just shocking, it was impossible. And when divers finally went down into those freezing waters, what they pulled out didn't just save lives. It revealed a secret that had been buried for 30 years. This is a story about loyalty, sacrifice, and a bond so powerful it transcended time itself. Stay until the very end, because the final revelation will leave you absolutely destroyed in the best way possible. Before we dive into this incredible true story, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel brings you the most amazing real-life stories that restore your faith in humanity. Drop a comment and tell us, do you believe dogs can sense things we can't? Now, let's get into what happened on that freezing December morning. December 19th, Pinewood County, somewhere in the heart of Minnesota's lake country. The temperature had dropped to negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit overnight, and Lake Meridian, a massive body of water stretching nearly 3 miles across, was frozen solid for the first time that season. Officer Marcus Webb had been with the Pinewood County Sheriff's Department for 12 years. He was 38 years old, a veteran cop who'd seen just about everything small-town Minnesota could throw at him. Car accidents on icy roads, domestic disputes, the occasional bar fight, missing person cases that usually ended with someone sleeping off a drunk at a friend's house. But Marcus wasn't alone on patrol. He never was. Riding in the passenger seat of his cruiser, ears perked and alert, was his partner and best friend, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois named Apollo. Apollo wasn't just any police dog. He was a legend in the department, 3-time state champion in canine trials, certified in tracking, narcotics detection, search and rescue, and cadaver recovery. He'd found missing children, tracked down escaped criminals, and once detected a carbon monoxide leak that saved an entire family. Marcus and Apollo had been partners for 4 years. In that time, they'd developed the kind of bond that went beyond training, beyond words. Marcus could read Apollo's body language like a book, and Apollo seemed to understand Marcus's thoughts before he even spoke them. On this particular morning, they were doing a routine patrol around Lake Meridian. The lake was popular with ice fishermen, and the department always increased patrols once the ice was thick enough to support weight. Every year, despite warnings, someone would venture out too early or stay too late, and the ice would give way. It was 7:43 a.m. when Marcus first noticed something was wrong. They were driving along Lakeshore Drive, the winding road that hugged the southern edge of Lake Meridian, when Apollo suddenly sat bolt upright in his seat. His ears shot forward, his body went rigid, and a low whine escaped his throat. "What is it, boy?" Marcus glanced at his partner, then back at the road. Apollo's whine grew louder, more insistent. He pressed his nose against the window, his breath fogging the glass, his eyes locked on something outside. Marcus slowed the cruiser. "You see something out there?" Before Marcus could react, Apollo let out a sharp bark, his alert bark, and started pawing frantically at the door. This was unusual. Apollo was trained to be calm and controlled. He didn't bark unnecessarily, and he certainly didn't act frantic without cause. Marcus pulled over to the shoulder and opened Apollo's door. The dog immediately jumped out and took off running toward the lake. "Apollo, heel!" Marcus shouted, but Apollo didn't even pause. Marcus grabbed his radio and his jacket and ran after him, his boots crunching through the crusty snow. "Damn it, Apollo, what's gotten into you?" Apollo reached the edge of the lake and stopped. And then, he did something Marcus had never seen him do in 4 years. He threw his head back and howled. It wasn't a bark or a whine. It was a deep, mournful, almost wolf-like howl that echoed across the frozen lake and sent chills down Marcus's spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Apollo, what the hell?" Marcus caught up to him, breathing hard. "What is it?" Apollo howled again, then started pawing at the ice at the water's edge, his claws scraping and scratching, his entire body trembling. Marcus looked out across the frozen expanse of Lake Meridian. The ice was white and pristine, covered with a thin layer of snow. There were no tracks, no visible holes, no signs of anyone or anything in distress. "There's nothing there, boy. Come on, let's go." But Apollo wouldn't move. He planted his feet, lowered his head, and howled again, a sound so haunting and desperate that it made Marcus's blood run cold. Marcus had been a canine handler long enough to know you never ignored a trained dog's instincts. If Apollo was alerting to something, there was something to alert to, even if Marcus couldn't see it. He radioed dispatch. "This is Unit 7. I'm at the south shore of Lake Meridian near the Lakeshore Drive access point. My K9 is alerting to something on the lake, requesting backup to investigate." "Copy that, Unit 7. What's the nature of the alert?" Marcus looked at Apollo, who was still pawing at the ice, still whining, still staring out at the frozen lake with an intensity that was almost frightening. "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but something's got him spooked. I've never seen him act like this." Within 20 minutes, 3 more patrol units arrived, along with Sergeant Linda Hayes, the shift supervisor. Linda was in her late 50s, a no-nonsense career cop who'd been with the department for 32 years. "What have we got, Webb?" she asked, approaching the lakeside where Apollo was still maintaining his vigil. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Marcus said. "Apollo alerted about 45 minutes ago, and he won't leave. He just keeps howling and pawing at the ice." Linda watched Apollo for a moment. She'd been around long enough to know that canines didn't act this way without reason. "Has he ever done this before?" "Never." "What's he trained for?" "Tracking, narcotics, search and rescue, and cadaver recovery." Linda's expression darkened. "You thinking there's a body under the ice?" Marcus swallowed hard. "I'm thinking he's detecting something. Whether it's alive or dead, I don't know, but he won't leave, Sarge. He physically won't leave." Sergeant Hayes made the call. "Get the ice rescue team out here, and call the dive team. If there's something under that ice, we need to find it." The ice rescue team arrived within the hour. 4 specially trained officers equipped with ice safety gear, rescue sleds, rope systems, and thermal imaging equipment. Jim Patterson, the team leader, was a grizzled veteran in his 50s who'd been doing ice rescues for 20 years. He approached Marcus and Apollo with professional curiosity. "This your dog?" he asked. "Yeah, Apollo. He's been alerting for over an hour now." Jim studied Apollo, who was still fixed on the lake, still periodically howling. "Where exactly is he focusing?" Marcus pointed. "Out there, maybe 200 yards from shore. He keeps staring at the same spot." Jim pulled out a pair of binoculars and scanned the ice. "I don't see any visible holes or cracks. No signs of anyone having been out there recently." "The ice is solid, right? It can support weight?" "Should be. It's been below freezing for 3 weeks straight. Ice should be at least 14 inches thick, but—" Jim lowered the binoculars. "If your dog is alerting, there's something. These animals don't lie." The ice rescue team suited up and ventured out onto the frozen lake, pulling a rescue sled loaded with equipment. They set up a perimeter around the area where Apollo kept focusing his attention. Jim Patterson deployed the thermal imaging camera, scanning the ice for any heat signatures that might indicate someone trapped beneath. At first, there was nothing. Just the cold, uniform signature of thick ice and freezing water beneath. But then, as Jim slowly panned the camera, he stopped. "Hold on," he said, his voice crackling over the radio. "I'm getting something." "What is it?" Sergeant Hayes asked from shore. There's a thermal anomaly, about 15 feet down. It's faint, really faint, but it's there." Marcus felt his heart skip. "Is it a person?" "Can't tell from here. Could be debris, could be a vehicle, could be—" Jim paused. "Could be biological. But if it is, I don't know how anything could still be generating heat down there. Water temperature's got to be just above freezing. The professional dive team arrived at 10:30 a.m. They were a specialized unit from the state police, trained in cold water rescue and recovery operations. Lead diver was Sarah Mitchell, a 35-year-old former Navy rescue swimmer who'd transitioned to law enforcement. She'd done dozens of ice dives, recovered drowning victims, pulled cars from lakes, and even located evidence in submerged crime scenes. But as she suited up in her dry suit, thermal layers, and dive equipment, Sarah couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. "Your dog's still howling," she observed, glancing at Apollo, who hadn't moved from his spot in over 3 hours. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "He won't stop." "What do you think is down there?" Marcus shook his head. "I have no idea. But Apollo knows. He definitely knows." At 11:15 a.m., Sarah Mitchell and her dive partner, Tom Rodriguez, cut a hole in the ice and descended into the dark, frigid waters of Lake Meridian. The underwater world was eerily silent. Their lights cut through the murky water, illuminating suspended particles and the ghostly underside of the ice above them. Sarah's voice came through the radio, muffled and distorted. "We're at 15 feet. Visibility about 10 feet. Water temp is 34 degrees. "Copy that," Jim Patterson responded from the surface. "The thermal signature should be about 20 yards north of your position." Sarah and Tom swam slowly, methodically, their lights sweeping back and forth. And then Sarah saw it. At first, she thought it was a log or a piece of debris, but as she got closer, her brain struggled to process what her eyes were seeing. It was a car, an old car, covered in decades of algae and sediment, sitting upright on the lake bottom. "I've got a vehicle," Sarah reported, her voice tense. "Looks like it's been down here for years, maybe decades. Can you identify make and model?" Sarah swam closer, her light illuminating the ghostly wreck. "It's old, 70s or 80s maybe. Sedan. Can't see the plates yet." "Any bodies inside?" Sarah approached the driver's side window. The glass was clouded with algae, but she could make out shapes inside. Her heart stopped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mitchell, report." "There's someone in the car, driver's seat. And—" She moved to the back window. "There's something in the back seat. I can't tell if it's—" "Jim, we need to get this car up. Now." The next 3 hours were a blur of activity. A heavy-duty wrecker was brought in, along with a crane and specialized lifting equipment. Divers attached cables to the submerged vehicle, and slowly, carefully, they began to raise it from the bottom of the lake. Apollo never left. He sat at the edge of the hole in the ice, whimpering, watching, waiting. Marcus stayed with him, one hand on his partner's head. "What do you know, boy? What are you trying to tell us?" At 2:47 p.m., the car broke the surface. Water poured from every gap and opening as the crane lifted it onto the ice. It was a 1982 Chevrolet Malibu, its blue paint faded and covered in algae, rust eating away at the metal. The license plate was barely readable, but Jim Patterson managed to make it out. He radioed it in to dispatch. 5 minutes later, the response came back. "That vehicle was reported stolen in 1993. Owner was—" There was a pause. "Owner was reported missing the same day, December 19th, 1993. Her name was Catherine Webb." Marcus felt the world tilt. Webb. His last name. "What did you say?" His voice barely worked. Sergeant Hayes was already pulling up records on her tablet. Her face went pale. "Marcus, Catherine Webb was reported missing 32 years ago today. She was 22 years old. She left her parents' house one evening and never came back. They found her car missing and filed a stolen vehicle report." Linda looked up, her eyes filled with emotion. "Marcus, she was your father's sister. Your aunt." The recovery team carefully pried open the driver's side door. Inside, preserved in the cold water, was a body. Female, early 20s. She was still strapped in the driver's seat, her hands on the wheel. But that wasn't what made everyone stop breathing. In the back seat, wrapped in a waterlogged blanket, was a small bundle. Sarah Mitchell carefully, reverently, lifted it out. It was a dog, a German shepherd, its fur still visible despite decades underwater. And around its neck was a collar with a tag that read, "Max, if found, return to Catherine Webb." The dog had been positioned protectively around something else in the back seat. As Sarah unwrapped the blanket, she found what it had been guarding. A baby carrier. Empty. The medical examiner arrived to process the scene. The preliminary assessment was tragic but clear. Catherine Webb had crashed through the ice on December 19, 1993. Her car had plunged through a weak spot, probably an area where the ice hadn't fully frozen due to an underground spring, which explained why the ice appeared solid everywhere else. The car had sunk quickly, filling with freezing water. But here's where the story became extraordinary. Based on the evidence, Catherine had managed to get her baby out of the carrier. There were scratch marks on the inside of the back window, made by Max, the German shepherd, who had been trying to break through. Investigators theorized that in her final moments, knowing she couldn't save herself, Catherine had somehow managed to push her baby up through a gap in the window with Max's help. The dog had pushed the infant to the surface, keeping the baby's head above water until help arrived. But no help had come. The accident had happened at night, on a remote section of the lake. No witnesses. No one knew they'd gone through the ice. Marcus stood in shock as Sergeant Hayes pulled up more records. "Marcus, do you know what happened to Catherine's baby?" He shook his head numbly. I didn't even know she had a baby. My dad never talked about her. It was too painful. She just disappeared." Linda turned her tablet toward him. The records show that a baby was found near Lake Meridian on December 20th, 1993, approximately 6 a.m. A fisherman found him on the shore, hypothermic but alive, wrapped in a wet blanket with a German shepherd standing over him. The dog was guarding the baby, keeping him warm. Marcus's vision blurred. What happened to the baby? The baby was taken to Mercy Hospital. Critical condition but survived. There was no identification, and no one ever came forward to claim him. The dog, Max. He died at the scene. Hypothermia. They said he'd been in the water for hours, probably all night. But he stayed with that baby until help arrived. Linda looked Marcus directly in the eyes. The baby was placed with a foster family, and 3 months later, he was adopted. She pulled up an adoption record. "Marcus, you were that baby." The words didn't make sense at first. Marcus heard them, but his brain couldn't process them. That's not possible. My parents adopted me, but they said my birth mother gave you up for adoption. That's what they believed," Linda said gently. "Marcus, your adoptive parents, David and Ellen Webb, they were Catherine's parents, your biological grandparents. When they found out a baby had been found near the lake around the time their daughter disappeared, they wondered. They petitioned to adopt you. They raised you as their son, but they never knew for certain that you were Catherine's baby. The DNA testing technology wasn't as advanced back then, and there was no body to compare to." Marcus looked at the car, at the body of the young woman who had died trying to save him, at the remains of the dog who had given his life to keep him alive. "Max," he whispered. And then it hit him like a freight train. Apollo. His partner. His protector. His best friend. Apollo was a rescue dog that Marcus had adopted from a shelter 4 years ago. Apollo had been found as a stray, wandering near Lake Meridian. "What's Apollo's backstory?" Linda asked, as if reading his mind. "Where did you get him?" "I adopted him from Pinewood County Animal Rescue 4 years ago. They found him wandering near the lake. No collar, no chip, no history. They estimated he was about a year old. I named him Apollo because that was the name of the Greek god who could see the future, Linda finished. Marcus, how old would that make Apollo now? 5 years old. Linda pulled up another record on her tablet. Her hands were shaking. Marcus, I need to show you something. This is going to sound impossible, but... She showed him a photo from 1993. It was from the investigation into Catherine's disappearance. In the photo was Max, Catherine's German shepherd, standing next to her car before the accident. Then she showed him a current photo of Apollo. The markings were identical. The face structure, the eyes, everything. That's not possible, Marcus breathed. Dogs don't live 35 years. No, they don't, Linda agreed. But Marcus, what if, and I know this sounds crazy, what if Max somehow came back? What if his spirit, his soul, whatever you want to call it, returned to finish what he started, to protect you, to watch over you? Marcus walked back to Apollo, who was still sitting at the edge of the ice, still staring at the recovered car. He knelt down beside his partner, tears streaming down his face. You knew, he whispered. You knew she was down there. You knew it was the anniversary. You brought me here so I could find her, so I could know the truth. Apollo turned to look at him. And for just a moment, Marcus could have sworn he saw something ancient and knowing in those eyes. Apollo leaned forward and gently licked the tears from Marcus's face. Then he did something he'd never done before. He placed his paw on Marcus's chest, right over his heart, and held it there. And Marcus understood. Max had saved him once, 32 years ago. Had given his life to pull an infant from freezing water and keep him alive until help came. And somehow, impossibly, he'd come back as Apollo to protect that same person throughout his life. Today, on the anniversary of Catherine's death, Apollo had brought Marcus to the lake to give him the truth, to give him closure, to let him know that he had been loved, had been fought for, had been worth dying for. 2 weeks later, the Pinewood County Sheriff's Department held a special ceremony on the shore of Lake Meridian. They buried Catherine Webb with full honors. She had died a hero, sacrificing herself to save her child. Next to her grave, they placed a monument for Max, the German shepherd who had died keeping that child alive. Marcus stood at the graves with Apollo by his side. The entire town had come out. The story had made national news. The mother who saved her baby, the dog who gave his life, and the miraculous rescue that took 32 years to be fully understood. Thank you, Marcus whispered to the graves. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for saving me. Apollo sat perfectly still, perfectly calm. He didn't howl, he didn't whine. His job was done. As they walked back to the patrol car, Marcus noticed something strange. For 4 years, Apollo had always jumped into the passenger seat eagerly, ready for the next call, the next adventure. But today he hesitated. He looked back at the lake one last time, as if saying goodbye. Then he turned to Marcus, and Marcus could have sworn Apollo smiled. That night, Apollo curled up next to Marcus's bed, just like he did every night. But this time he placed his head on Marcus's hand and closed his eyes with a deep, contented sigh. When Marcus woke up the next morning, Apollo was gone. Not physically. He was still breathing, still lying beside the bed. But something had changed. The intensity was gone. The urgent watchfulness that had always characterized Apollo had softened. He was just a dog now. A good dog. A loyal dog. But the otherworldly quality, that sense of ancient purpose, had faded. His mission was complete. 5 years have passed since that December morning. Marcus still works for the Pinewood County Sheriff's Department, and Apollo is still his partner, though they've both slowed down a bit. Apollo is officially 10 years old now, getting gray around the muzzle, preferring naps in the sun to long patrols. But Marcus knows the truth. Every year on December 19th, they return to Lake Meridian. Marcus lays flowers on his mother's grave and on Max's monument, and every year Apollo sits quietly beside him, calm and peaceful. The story of the dog who wouldn't stop howling became legend. People come from all over to visit the graves, to hear the story, to marvel at the impossible loyalty of a dog who may have loved so deeply that not even death could stop him from protecting the child he'd saved. Marcus never talks about the supernatural elements of the story in public, but in his heart, he knows. Max came back for him, watched over him, guided him to the truth. And when that mission was complete, Max finally allowed himself to rest, knowing the baby he'd pulled from freezing water 32 years ago was safe, was loved, and knew exactly how much he'd been worth saving. Some bonds are too powerful for death to break. Some love is too strong to ever let go. And some heroes come back, not because they have to, but because love demands nothing less. This true story reminds us that love and loyalty transcend everything, even death itself. Whether you believe it was coincidence, divine intervention, or something beyond our understanding, the facts remain. A mother died saving her child, a dog gave his life to complete that rescue, and 32 years later, justice and truth finally came to light. If this story moved you, please like this video and share it with everyone you know. Subscribe to this channel for more incredible true stories that prove miracles do happen. Comment below and tell us, do you believe animals can sense things beyond our understanding? Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Until next time, cherish those who protect you, honor those who came before, and remember, love never dies. It just takes different forms.